Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 258 of Kouryer podcast. Our today's guest is Mr. Omar Siddiqui. He's a freelance concept artist focusing on environments from Dallas, Texas, United States. And of course, as usual, if you go into the for context section of the captions, which is right down below wherever you're watching or listening to this episode, you can find the ID to his Instagram account, the links to his YouTube channel, which we're going to talk about in this podcast extensively, and also a link to his Gumroad, which actually, for anyone who's listening, there's a little surprise there. I'm not going to spoil it to what it is. I'm just going to give you a little spoiler. It's for 3D artists, who might need some certain assets, but, you can go check out the link yourselves. And with that being said, how are we doing today? And I just have to just mention that I really like your background, the decor of your house, the room, the plans.
Oh yeah,
and everything.
I know it was a work in progress for the longest time, and
it's so refreshing.
But yeah, dude, plants are everything. When you put plants in the background, they just liven things up. I wasn't really a plant guy to begin with, but I put one plant and I'm like, yo, this looks nice, the green color. And so now I'm going to keep adding to that collection and a little bit of painting.
It has a nice contrast with the whiteness of the door and the frame behind it.
Yeah,
cool.
For sure. Yeah.
And
thanks for having me up here, though. Appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, man. I actually forgot to ask you this, before we started. Is this like the first podcast you've been on? I like this. I like to ask this question a lot, to guests, because it's always, I'm curious about that.
I guess officially, yes. I mean, I've done one like maybe 5 years ago when I was in college, because it was a class assignment for a friend who was doing a sound engineering class or something. But other than that, I would say this is my first official podcast, I guess, with someone new.
Right, fair enough. And all right, so let's start with, the question and subject I start off each episode with, which is give us a little introduction on how we got into the world of visual arts and design. Basically, tell us your origin story, how you basically got on this path to become an artist, what led you to become an artist. Like, tell us about your journey from the start of it.
So for me, I guess like every other cliched artist, I grew up drawing a lot, and I grew up watching a lot of anime as well. And I guess when I was done with high school, I had to make a decision, right? Okay, what do I want to do for a living? So from there, I wasn't really like pursuing it professionally. It was more just like a hobby. But then when I was around, I guess around when COVID happened, I kind of got more into, just games a little bit. Like I was playing a lot of video games, and then started like doing more research on like concept art, illustration, animation, 3D modeling. And I was like, whoa, I can actually like learn this stuff and actually work as an artist. And so that's where like the journey for me pretty much began. Prior to that, I was just doing like I was in a very traditional route, going through that engineering school. And then I like made the switch. I'm like, you know what? While I'm young, let me just experiment and try this out. Like, I don't care if I fail in my 30s, it's fine. Then I can always go back to college, get a degree, do something else, right? But while I'm young and I have energy, I'm going to like go ahead and try this out. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it's fine. So I guess that's where the journey started. Around, I want to say, like 2019/2020.
All right. And what they say, like, that's actually such an interesting point, when you mentioned, while I'm young, I'm just going to go wild and try all these different things I'm interested in. That's actually such an interesting point. But, given with everything you just experienced, at this point, by far, if you could turn back time and, you could, have 5 minutes with your 18-year-old self again, what did you say to him?
Man, if I could turn back time, I don't know. I feel like I would tell my younger self to practice my drawing fundamentals a lot more than just painting pretty images. Is because I guess when I first got introduced to the whole concept art world, I was already learning 3D modeling a little bit on the side. Like I had like little courses in college, like where I took like 3D modeling classes. And when I saw the concept work for like Last of Us, I thought that, I can just learn a 3D program and then just start building concept art. Because I feel like during that time, Blender was getting very mainstreamed. And so I went down that route and I got good at 3D for a little bit, but then I did not know what it takes to make a good image, like, lighting, color, shadow, mood. Like I did not know any of that composition. I was just randomly making stuff. Text, how easy it is to texture stuff now with PBR materials. So I would definitely tell myself that, hey, go back to your basics, learn your fundamentals. Because I feel like as artists, we reach a point where our ego gets to us, right? We're like, oh no, I'm good at drawing. Like I know how to do this. Like I don't need to go back to the basics, right? But then when you actually get feedback on your work from professionals, and when they tell you that, hey, practice the fundamentals, that's like the biggest slap in the face that, hey, you need to like practice the basics before you start doing all this cool shit that you're doing. And lately I've been doing that, not very regularly, but like to some extent. And I've seen my work jump like a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, just sticking to fundamentals. That's such a common thing that plagues like every beginner. Even myself. Just basically most people I know. Like you're passionate about making cool art and just want to quickly jump in and make the cool art, but then you just skip through all those boring fundamentals that you didn't want to practice, but it's gonna bite you sometime along the way.
Yeah, and also like, people don't really focus more on the storytelling aspect of making an image, right? Like there has to be like some sort of emotion, some sort of story. And and I had this realization, like I was taking a class and I made this like super cool environment, I built out everything in 3D, did a paint over. And then my teacher was like, so what's the story here? And I'm like, some dude just standing with a stick and a cool house or something, It's like, so if you don't know what the story is or what you're trying to show, then it doesn't really like connect with people.
Yeah, exactly. And now speaking of story, like that's actually such a interesting point, because I want to move into this next subject, which is how does your design process usually go anytime you want to start working on a new project? Like, speaking of that, there's actually like the link to his YouTube channel is actually in the description for anyone who's listening or watching this episode. There's so many good videos that you can watch, especially actually about the design process and the structure of the pipeline. But we want to hear it right now, from your own point of view. Like, how would you describe the structure of or pipeline?
Like the workflow. I want to say my workflow is constantly changing. So it went through so many phases. So like I mentioned earlier a little bit, like at first I thought that I could just make stuff in 3D because I don't have to like draw. I can just like build everything out. I'm going to have my perspective and, just call it a day. And then the more I did that, the more I realized that it's more time consuming to do ideation in 3D than it is in 2D. Oops. So what I started doing instead was that, like now what I do, first of all, I'll start off with picking out references. Like for example, the prop design series that I'm doing right now, it's actually heavily inspired by Cappadocia in Turkey. It's like those mountains that have like caves. And so I was like, I want to make something that's inspired by this, this area, this place. And so the idea started from there. So I looked up some images and then I put them all together. And then, so that project is also part of like a mini class that I'm taking. And so the feedback that I got was, okay, these images are cool, but how can we like add a twist to them? Like, right now, if you just copy whatever you see in those images, it's just going to look like, like you're just doing a study. And so the next step was me trying to figure out, okay, how can I use this element and make it look interesting and original? And so I thought, okay, why not we go through this route of like, hey, this is a location, right? We got these mountains, people are living in there, and there's a meteorite that came and crashed here. And now that meteorite became crystals and jewels that are heat absorbent. And now these people are using these jewels to kind of like use it in their daily lives. And so from there came the idea of, okay, how about I make a bakery? Like how would a bakery look like in this city, but they're using these jewels to power up their stoves? So that's where the idea began. Like, and then from there, I went ahead and took more references on how, people make breads and stuff. I know like in the Middle Eastern culture, Pakistani culture, they make like those naan breads and, all those amazing breads, right? You know what I'm talking about? And so I kind of went down this rabbit hole of just researching that part. And then I got more references for like the interior shots. So I guess like the first few days was just me Googling and YouTubing stuff and trying to figure out relevant stuff that I can use and make. Because at the end of the day, it has to look relatable. But if you're also making something that's original, it needs to have that balance, right? Of like fiction, original, and relatability. So once I had that figured out, then I went ahead and started sketching. And usually the sketching that I do is mostly just like a front face, a 2D sketch of like the front view of the bakery. From there, I went to 3D, did like 6 very simple looking sculpts. Then I came back to Photoshop and then I sketched on top of them just to redefine everything. And then from there, once I decided that, hey, this one looks good, out of the 6 sketches, one of them looks good. Then I went back to 3D, built everything out, textured it, rendered it, and then went back to Photoshop, painted over it. So generally, that's what my workflow looks like. And now, as far as software goes, I use 3D Code, Blender, and Photoshop. And 3D Code is mainly a software that I use for sculpting and texturing. And I only use it if I have like an interesting focal point. Like I wouldn't use it for every single 3D model that I have in my scene because this is going to be a waste of time. So most of my scene building happens inside of Blender. But if I have a focal point, that's going to be like the main focus of an environment piece. I'll make sure that that's like highly detailed, very interesting looking, and 3D Code makes it easier for me to like work on that. So yeah, that's what I would say my workflow is. Sorry, that was a super long answer.
No, that's fine. Actually, have you ever considered, like, implementing like, use of engines in your workflow as well as a concept artist? Because I kind of forgot her name, but there was this concept artist who she specifically specialized in, using Unreal Engine and, making her pieces in her studio. Oh yeah, I think that was her name. Yeah. Have you ever, tried to, implement, engines, or even I felt the need to do that?
I've tried it, but my computer sucks, and so I wasn't able to run it properly. But I've definitely tried to implement it. But at the same time, it's also like, I feel like as concept artists, they're like, so when you're a concept artist, you don't really have any limitations when it comes to software, right? You just use whatever you want to create an image. And I feel like with every year, every couple of years, there's always going to be a better software, bigger software. So before making that jump, I feel like it's very important that you get comfortable using the softwares you've been using first. And then when you see that there's like a drastic change, then you start jumping to a different software. You know what I mean? Like at some point you got to stop learning softwares and start making more pieces. Because I went down this rabbit hole where I was like, okay, let me just learn Blender. Let me just learn ZBrush. Then I got to learn Substance Painter. And then, you have like a whole list of softwares. And so I try to like stay out. So I didn't really find the need to use it yet, to the point where I'm like seeing everyone do it. But I'm pretty sure in the near future, I'll definitely want to at least try it at least once. But for now, I'm just sticking with whatever I have, because then it's a whole another learning curve at that point. And I feel like it's going to stop me from creating more projects.
But I highly suggest you to try just using the default settings of just Lumen lighting in Unreal. Just make a simple scene and just import it into Unreal, and the real time lighting is amazing.
Yeah, I've heard and I've seen a lot of stuff. So
yeah, it's really good, the lighting, the things you can do with Lumen. The very not in with just, I don't know, like 1 hour of tutorials or even less than that, you can achieve a lot of really good results out of the lighting of your scene. Instead of, because of course you can do a lot of stuff in Blender and other like 3D softwares as well, but I don't know, like just it's much more convenient when it comes to just having that just good lighting. Maybe there's a lot of other things, like I'm not a pro concept artist or anything like that, but from my very limited experience, that's one of the big things I've noticed when it comes to just using Unreal Engine for taking screenshots to maybe then later put them in the Photoshop to overpaint, to get the lighting right. Like I think it really helps. I don't know
for sure.
If anyone knows anything about this, leave any suggestions or topics you have down in the comment section, so others can learn. I'm not a professional, by the way, in any shape or form, but this is just from my limited experience. But yeah.
Yeah, I think like with Unreal, it's also very good at handling very high poly models. So that's also a really good thing.
Oh yeah, definitely, especially with the nanites that they implemented something Unreal 5. Yeah, I mean, like, here's the thing: using Unreal for like a concept artist is way different than using Unreal for like 3D environment artist, which is actually something that I'm trying to be. And the thing is, because you're willing to optimize everything and take into account for every single like settings and thing you take in the the options menu, like of everything you need to import. But for a concept artist, in the end of the day, correct me if I'm wrong. You just need like a couple of good screenshots so you can then take it to the next software and just work on it. Am I right? Or I'm probably wrong in some shape or form, but
For the most part, yeah. You just like put everything together, either screenshot or render it.
Exactly.
And then you do more on.
So you can get away with a lot of stuff. So I actually think like Unreal in that sense could really help, to be honest.
Yeah.
And the next thing I want to ask you is actually, in the introduction, I mentioned that, of course, you're a concept artist, but, with the focusing on environments. Now, here's my question, what led you to decide to, all right, I want to specialize in environments,
So for me, what happened was when I started getting more into concept art, now if you Google concept art, right, and you open Google Images, the first few images you get is of like keyframe shots, environment concepts. You'll rarely get any character concepts or illustrations that popped up. So I was like, you know what? If I want to get into this thing, I think I should try getting into environments. That was like the first time that I made that decision. And then from there, I got a couple Skillshare courses from Hardy Fowler. And then during his courses, I didn't really make anything original. It was just me copying him and doing whatever he was doing. And by the end of that course, I was like, you know what? This was actually fun. Like, I did not dislike it. And prior to doing environment design, I was only drawing anime. And it was a big jump, the most different thing I've ever done in my entire life. And the main reason why I avoided doing environments for so long is because I did not know how to approach them, right? And I feel like for a lot of things, many times we're scared of trying new things because we don't know how to approach them, right? And once you get that, once you figure out a way to get there, once you learn a little bit, once you learn the approach, then you start realizing that, oh my God, this is actually not that bad. And as I said earlier, like I was trying to go into it, with a very like open mindset. Like I was like, okay, I'm gonna be super open about the experience, and I'm gonna be super honest with myself. Like, will I enjoy making environments, or is it just going to be like, whatever, right? Because I knew that the worst that's going to happen is that I'm just going to not do it again, But that was the first thing that got me into it. And then, of course, when all the concept work for Last of Us came out, I was like, shit, I want to do stuff like this. And then since then, I've just been doing environments for the most part.
All right, cool. And speaking of environments, what was the first, commission or job you had regarding being an environment concept artist? Do you remember that?
Actually, I guess I didn't really have a proper environment concept art job. It was mostly like just doing storyboards, and in those storyboards they were very like focused on, it was like an outdoor scene, right? This guy was shooting a commercial, and so I had to do a lot of like matte painting, a lot of like 3D modeling, and I had to create a camera and just like make all those shots. But that was like the first one that I ever got, and it was a lot of fun to work on.
Awesome. And well, you mentioned Hardy Fowler, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, Hardy Fowler, yeah.
Speaking of artists you looked up to and try to get inspiration from, who are some of your favorite artists and designers that have inspired you the most?
Man, I don't know. There's so many now. It's like the more I dig into it, the more I find. But obviously, Hardy Fowler was the first artist ever that like got me into it. And then from there were a bunch of artists. Like I definitely love a lot of stuff that Danar Warrior does. And when I was at Lightbox, I actually had a chance to meet him as well. And he's like a really nice guy. And the reason why I like him so much is because he's very experimental with the stuff that he does. Like after doing all the stuff for Last of Us, he then moved to the movie scene, and now he's doing like his own animation stuff. And it's just like, it's very interesting to see someone like that. And the one advice that he gave me when I met him was that, hey, you're an artist, just like create stuff that you enjoy. Don't just like pigeonhole yourself into like one thing that, okay, I just got to make environments and that's it. Just like do animation, do whatever you want. So that was definitely a good one. The other artist that I really like is Pablo Dominguez. Like his stuff is really awesome, like all the Star Wars stuff. This guy, he's worked in every movie at this point, and his stuff is amazing. And then I had a couple teachers who I really look up to. I mean, there's James Pake. I had a chance to learn from him through Brainstorm School, and Kenny Vo. There's so many, man. Like I can't just like name a couple. I have a hard time just figuring out like my favorite artists because like they're all so good.
Yeah, this question is actually a tricky question of the podcast because when you ask someone who's your favorite inspirations or an artist and stuff like that, especially like to someone who's also an artist, it's kind of like I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like a numbing question because there's so many answers suddenly pop up in your brain. It's like that clip in YouTube where some guy prankster just walks on the street and asks like different people, name a woman,
Right? I'm
and,
like,
and just freaks out. No, just any woman. And you're like, what? You know?
Yep. That's what happened. Yep. I was like, and I'm pretty sure once I'm done talking to you, I'll be like, oh my God, I should have mentioned this guy.
Yeah, but actually, you see, the point of the questions like this is whoever pops in your brain the first are the actual real answers, not the answer you have to prepare for, you need to, research for, is not the actual real answer. Technically, but the actual real answer is the answer that pops up in your head without thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
know?
Yeah.
So that's the whole point. It's like a technique of the interview, for me. And to ask these questions like this. But speaking of, different artists, that inspired you, let's talk about something else that I've also noticed in your works is you've experimented with a lot of different styles, if I'm not mistaken. Like there's like just so many different, like, there's some illustration types things, in the beginning when I checked your, Instagram, there's, hard surfers, there's, creatures, there's, just all around like a lot of things. But I think, in your past couple of like scenes, I've seen that you're kind of honing into a certain type of like, environments, like style, which is, I think it's getting into the zone of sci-fi mostly, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Like sci-fi. Right? Yeah, for the most part. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how do you feel about that? Like, what are your thoughts about just having a style for yourself or experimenting with different styles?
I feel like right now, even the sci-fi stuff is not really like, I wouldn't consider it like my style. Like I'm still experimenting and creating like more fantasy stuff. If anything, I want to do more grounded stuff, right? Like I feel like as far as style goes, the theme is different, but the style is relatively the same, right? I'm still using 3D to make all these images, but the theme is usually different. Sometimes it's horror, sometimes it's sci-fi, sometimes it's, fantasy, sometimes it's going to be like more, real world grounded stuff. And I try to like change it up every single time, because I feel like when I first got into learning 3D code, I was having a really good time with just like making hard surface stuff. So for a while, I was doing a lot of like sci-fi. But then from there, I was like, you know what? I want to work on something that's not sci-fi because I'm getting bored now. And so I did like some other things like the mountain project with the spikes coming out and then like a couple more interior shots. And then now that I've done all of that, I'm like, you know what? Let me go back and do more sci-fi. So it's like it always flip-flops, it's a switch. You have to like just turn on and turn off. But at the core of all these images that I'm creating, I'm still using the same workflow, So that's what I said. Like once you have like a good workflow that you come up with, it's very easy to kind of like just try whatever you want to try. I guess the only thing that I haven't tried at this point is more stuff that's more stylized, like Disney, Pixar, and more that's you'll see stuff in like animation. That would be like a completely different style. But as far as what I've going on right now, it's kind of like it's very well established to the point where I can change the theme and do whatever I want. And I really enjoy watching sci-fi movies. And many times when I do work on a sci-fi piece, is usually after I watched a sci-fi movie. Like I recently binge watched the entire Alien franchise, and every single movie, I was like pausing and I'm like looking at the environments and thinking about how I could make those in 3D when I'm making stuff. So it's definitely a phase, but yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I can definitely feel what you mean by that. And speaking of that, actually, I recently watched like this series that I used to really love, which is called Firefly. It's like a sci-fi series from like early 2000s. Have you watched that?
I have not. Is it good?
Are you into Western sci-fi?
I guess not. Not really. I don't know. Like I haven't gone deep enough. Like I've only watched the mainstream stuff. If I'm being honest with you.
No, by Western sci-fi, I mean like it's kind of like a subgenre of sci-fi. It's kind of like cowboy sci-fi, sometimes call it, or something like that. It's really good actually. I really recommend that. Like the acting and writing is really good, and the setting I really dig it. If you're from the things I've seen from your art session, I think you'll like it.
Cool. Yeah,
And
I'll check it out. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, there's also one other thing I wanted to mention and talk about, which is which is kind of like part of like something we kind of discussed about a little bit before we started recording of the podcast, which is about making connections actually, which is a really important topic. Which here's an interesting thing for me. There are topics like for example, I'm gonna get off topic for a second. Like since like 60s and 70s, there's been a huge surge of like motivational speakers, self motivation books, courses, seminars, and stuff like that. And you feel like after all these decades, people still need like different methods of getting motivation, or like you feel like it's something that should have been solved by now, But what I'm trying to say is, if you compare it to what I'm going to say, you kind of understand the point I'm trying to get about making connections. So making connections has always been something that's been, super important in an industry you're working in. All right. And after all these decades and just how many hours of, content that has been uploaded on YouTube and different social medias about how to connect to people, how to do all this stuff, um, it still feels like a riddle for a lot of people, That's what I'm trying to get at. And from my personal experience, just it doesn't matter what the platform is. You need to learn the etiquette of each platform, whether it be Discord, whether it be Instagram. And by etiquette, I don't mean like, you don't have to just, I don't know, there's like some special language for it or something like that, but learn how people usually use it. And from my experience, Instagram has been one of the best. Then second to that would be Twitter. But when it comes to like, asking, if you genuinely wanted, this is my like best suggestion I could give to anyone. If you genuinely want to connect with someone and have a conversation with them and make actual real connection, email is the best, in my opinion. Email is the best because listen, we all use Instagram as kind of like a hobby, as kind of like a short, as something fun. So just social media in general, And LinkedIn has this aura of like being dry and like too corporate and stuff. So when you go there, you're in like a work mindset. But when you email, this person took the time to actually find the email address, copy paste it, and write the topic and subject, and said, hey, I like your work, and I was wondering if I can get some time to get to know your opinion. And from there on, you make a connection, you talk, stuff like that. I think emails has been the best way to actually make genuine questions if you're serious. I know this might sound weird to a lot of you, but this is from my personal experience of like, sending like messages throughout all different social media platforms and emails for the podcast. Like I've sent well over 2,200 different people messages. I'm not kidding. I have a log that I record and archive everything. For the past 4 years, I've sent like 2,230 something messages, So I know the email had the highest success rate of getting a reply back, And Twitter, weirdly enough, had the lowest. Like people don't just check DMs on Twitter for some reason. ArtStation, again, the lowest, but sometimes the people answer. But of course, if you're going to message on ArtStation, please check the general tab. If you don't have any business, inquiries with that person, don't put business. Because if they were in a bad mood and they report your message, your profile could be in a bit of a trouble. But yeah, just take the general tab. You'll see what I mean. But these were my experiences, all right? Now we want to hear from you. What has been like, you've made like a good amount of following for yourself on Instagram and also YouTube. So I'm sure, you've made some, good connections out of these social media platforms as well. So what would be your, biggest, lessons you've learned from all the experiences you have?
So I want to say, like, for me, the best way that I've connected with people has been through Instagram, mainly because the one thing that people don't really do is like they'll follow someone they admire, and that's all they do. They'll just follow them, like their posts, and they'll just like go on with their day, right? Hoping that this person would like notice them. But I kind of figured out a hack for myself that's been working. Like whenever I come across someone's drawing on ArtStation and I like it, and they're also a concept artist like me, I will like their first 6 posts, and then I'll leave a comment on their most latest drawing, and I'll be like super specific about what I like about their drawing. And then more than likely, they'll follow me back. And if they do follow me back, then I'll send them a message that, hey, thanks a lot for the follow, and I love your stuff. And then from there, we just start talking. And this process, what it does is that you don't really end up connecting with a lot of people, but when you do connect with someone, you end up becoming friends with them. And that's the part that people are missing. People are missing the relatability part, right? Like you get to realize that this person behind this drawing, this person is also human. They're not just like some higher power who's just making these cool images, right? They're just like you, they're humans. And that's how I've connected for the most part. But other than that, the other way that I've grew my following as well is just on Instagram by posting a lot of reels. I feel like the algorithm of Instagram has changed a lot. You can only, in my experience, I've only grown my stuff by putting out reels that blew up. And then through my reels, if someone comments down below and, I feel I like their stuff, I will follow them back, leave them a message. If they look at it, that's fine. If they don't, then, that's fine too. But I do like the idea of email as well. Because like with email, you can because what happens with Instagram is that if someone messages me and I'm not following them back, it goes to my requests bar and, you miss it, right? But with email, like you still see your email at this point. But at the same time, for me, Instagram it worked a lot better in my case. And also I feel like I can like see what the other person looks like. I can see if they're even like, relevant, if they're in the industry. But a lot of the good connections that I've made has mostly been through just my classmates. And we all like have this system now. Like whenever someone posts a drawing or posts a concept art piece, we'll like share it to our story. You know how they can share stuff to your story and stuff. And then when you do that, the person really appreciates it. So if I meet someone new on Instagram and they follow me back or whatever, even if they don't follow me back, I just like their stuff. I'm gonna just go ahead and share it on my story because I like their stuff. I want other people to see it. And for the most part, whenever I've done that, the person whose stuff that I shared on my story like actually responded and be like, hey, thanks for the share. And then that's the point where you can start talking to them and be like, hey, yeah, I love your stuff. I wonder how you made this thing or whatever. And so it's all about like just being really personal with people and not making it look like it's transactional, right? You want to stay away from being like, hey, I love your stuff. Can you give me a feedback on my portfolio? Like this person doesn't know you. Why would they spend their time giving you feedback on your portfolio? You'd rather build that connection first, wait a couple days, and then kind of like ask them that, hey, I love your stuff. We've been talking. I wonder if you can like help me out here. And I actually did that with a concept artist. His name is Bobby Hernandez. He worked for Insomniac Games, and now he's working at That's No Moon Studios. And so I kind of followed him. He followed me back, and we've kind of been like on and off talking on different subjects since the last year. And then recently, I like messaged him that, hey, I'm trying to like get like a full-time gig with as an environment concept artist, and I've seen you've done similar stuff. What path did you take and whatnot? And then he gave me like a really nice big reply, just explaining everything, So I feel like once you make that connection with people, just trying to like get to know them, then you get better responses as opposed to just like cold emailing, cold messaging that, hey, I love your stuff. Can you help me? Because no one's gonna like feel that connection, and they won't like help you if they don't feel like it. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that what you mean. And but just two more things I want to add, with everything both of us said. I think here's the first one, which is, whenever you're interacting with someone, whether on social media or outside, people usually, then both of us, I think, we can agree, our reactions, our behaviors are kind of dictated by our moods, which is kind of pretty basic things, So for example, if someone doesn't message you or someone doesn't, messages you in a bad way, don't try to take it too personally, I mean, of course, you can't help it. You do kind of, but what I'm trying to say is, not everyone's going to be on their, A game, every 24/7 every day. So don't try to get discouraged. Don't try to, take it too personal. And also not just that, people, like everyone has a different style of like using social media. We talked about etiquette of social media and stuff like that. You explained some of your etiquette, but everyone has their own different game, when it comes to social media and just how they like to use it, So also don't get discouraged if, someone, doesn't, I don't know, like your stuff or something like that, So, people use the social media in different ways. Some people I don't know. I've seen just they post stuff, but they never answer DMs. Some people answer DMs very fast. Some people answer DMs after 2 weeks. Everyone's different, So don't get if you don't get a reply, just move on. It's fine. Don't
Yeah.
take it from personal. Yeah, that is fine.
Hmm.
And with that being said, even though I said that, but don't let this be a discouragement. Keep going. You'll find the people who will eventually, are going to be the ones that are going to help you throughout the way. And yeah, just keep going, I guess. That's kind
Yeah.
of cliche, but it is
And
what it is.
and as much as it sucks saying this, I do feel like you have to reach a certain level where your art looks really good in order to get people to give you attention. Like I've literally seen that happen to me. Like towards the end of 2022, that's when I feel like something clicked in me, and I was like making good pieces, and that's when I started seeing that, oh, people who I've been following for the past 2-3 years, now they're following me back. So I will say that this works a lot better when you have already like reached, or you're slowly reaching that bar, the quality bar, right? You want to reach that quality bar for people to like even give a shit about you, right? And I know it sucks that it is this way, but that's just how the world works at this point. And that's why I think like social media is all good and stuff, but I feel like you have to definitely put in the hours and work on yourself first, work on your art, make good pieces, and then you'll just like the audience will just come to you, because they'll be like, oh my god, this guy's so cool. I mean, if you're not that good, or even if you're not hitting that quality bar, even if you are just consistent with just posting stuff on Instagram, and it's to the point where someone can see that, oh, this guy's trying really hard, or this girl is doing really good, I'm going to follow them back. I want to see their journey. So that's also another thing I want to add.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like that is actually so true. Not just in art, in any field, people like they might show you a mask of happiness and the smiles, when they meet you because that's the social norm, but deep down they might not respect you. That's just a really harsh, cold truth of the world. But I also want to add to that, you shouldn't really be motivated by people's opinion like this. I know like what I'm also saying sounds really weird and cliche, but well, all right, I'm just gonna like sum up everything I want to say. Just your only competition for now is yourself. All right. So just be better than yesterday, and don't really get anxious about who's following you or not, or just who's liking or not. Just focus on you. Try to find what you like. Get laser focus on it, and eventually everything will literally fall in place.
Yeah,
that's it. Like we talked for like 20 minutes just about this subject, but if I could sum up the only thing you need to know, just that was it.
Right. And just
Everything
setting up
will fall
goals
in
for
place.
yourself and achieving them. That's kind of like how I came up with the YouTube channel, because I was like, okay, I got to make something every week, and I have a video that I need to upload every week. So now I have a goal that, okay, every week I got to make something art related. And that could either be like one painting, or it could be, a bigger project broken down into different weeks. So
Yeah, just kind of on the topic of YouTube, I have a question for you. Like let me actually ask you in front of like everyone's listening, because this might also be useful for them as well. So for anyone who's seen the YouTube channel of Kouryer Podcast, it's just the video version of the podcast on it. All right, that's pretty much it. All right, and I was kind of wondering if I also wanted to make tutorial content myself. So I don't know if I should just upload it to this channel or make a separate channel, like a type of channel you have for yourself. It's like a personal channel. It's yourself. The brand is yourself. It's not a studio or anything, and you're just sharing your experiences personally. So do you think I should just upload the tutorials and the stuff I want to upload on the same YouTube channel, or should I just leave that YouTube channel for the podcast? Because like in the future, I want to make Kouryer my brand and the studio and everything at one point. So they kind of fall into the same umbrella. But when it comes to what is the more efficient way, what would you do in my position actually?
ooh, that's a tough one. I don't know. See, the trend that I've seen is that people usually have one YouTube channel, and once they build it up to the point where they have a bigger following, then they start making other channels. So I would definitely think that it's better if you stick to one channel, just build that up, and then eventually move on to a different one. So for now, because what's going to happen is that if you if you're just starting out and you already have two channels, you have no guarantee that you'll have the same subscribers subscribe to this other channel, right? How many times have you subscribed to a channel and you don't really watch their videos anymore, right? I think we all do that. Like, I've subscribed to so many channels and I don't even watch their videos because I don't know, I just forget, or it's just not, I'm just not watching them anymore. So imagine if someone's like that and they won't subscribe to your second channel if they're not watching your first channel, right? So I would definitely think maybe start off with one channel, just keep building it up, see how that goes. Because kind of like how Bobby Chu does, like the Schoolism channel. Do you know about it?
Yeah, but I kind of don't remember how the channel was.
So yeah, his channel, he used to do the same thing, right? He was interviewing a lot of artists like how you're doing, but then at the same time, he would also post like other videos. And I feel like it worked pretty well for him, you know? And then once it grew up to a point where he had a lot of subscribers, then he made a separate channel just called Bobby Chu, where he was doing his personal stuff. And the interviews are still like on the other channel now. So I would say definitely experiment. If you have, definitely feel like, I think it's better to, sorry. I feel like it's much better to just have one channel, build that up. And then if you see an opportunity for a different one, then you can do another one. That's just my humble opinion on this.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. Actually, I checked, like, wow, these interviews are from 10 years ago. This is amazing, actually.
Yeah.
You know? Like, one thing, like, sure, like, if you look at the landscape of the podcast I'm doing, it might, sound or seem a little bit depressing because of all this, the amount of episodes out there. But while at the same time, the views are suffer very low. And I have my own reasons why I'm doing the podcast. So, of course, obviously, it's like, I like it. Everyone likes, having a lot of views and stuff, right? But my main reason and goal and what drives me isn't necessarily that. So that's why I've been able to, keep up after 4 years, feel to just say, like this. But the one main thing that's a really good reason for me is, for example, these interviews, like in 10 years or 20 years, like just now what's happening with like, schoolism interviews that I'm seeing that have effect. It's kind of, if you think about it, a slice of life of an artist in 2023 or 2024 or whichever year I'm, conducting the podcast. And imagine just looking at those in 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by slice of life. Look at our hairstyle, look at our facial hair, look at our clothing, look at our decors, look at the way of speaking, the vocabulary we use. All of this are kind of be really useful, like, pieces of information for future generations. I know it sounds kind of crazy or weird, but it's true.
Yeah, dude, like my oldest video on my channel is from the year 2020, I think so. So my channel, I started it back in 2020. I uploaded like maybe 4 videos and then I stopped. Then I uploaded some more back in 2021 and then I stopped. And then 2022, I was like, you know what? Let me start doing this. And so 2022, I started like towards the end of the year. And then I stopped in 2023 around like May, because during that time I was moving to a new house and I was also taking a class, a lot of stuff going on. So I stopped. And then towards the end of last year, I started my channel again. And so like so now I've been like going very consistent with it so far. Hopefully I'm going to keep going that way. But yeah, when I look at my old videos, I'm just like, man, look at me. I used to talk so funny. And so you learn from those experiences when you watch your older self. And, it's actually a really, really good experience, just like going through your older stuff and then realizing how far you've come. It's not usually about subscribers or views. Many times it's about your personal development as well. Just seeing your growth as a person, which is really interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely. But mostly, you look at your old self and you see, oh, how funny I looked or how funny I looked. But I look at myself and I just cringe, man. Like, I'm listening. Why was I having that hairstyle? Why was I like speaking like that? Like, dude, trust me, I've had some really embarrassing moments sometimes, like that I find cringe for myself on this podcast in the past. If I could, delete them and replace them, I definitely would. But I know, like, if I can't like just ignore those. I have to accept that they were part of me, and I never grow from that if I don't accept the cringe, in a sense.
Right.
This is like, I'm using Zoomer vocabulary for explaining some,
and I get it. I get all of it.
Yeah. But yeah. All right. So there's another thing I want to ask you as well. What are you working on right now? If you can tell us about it. If there's no NDA involved, what kind of project are you working on?
Right now, I'm not really working on any project because I feel like the industry is like at a halt with all the layoffs happening. So I'm just
And
spending my time building more pieces, taking some personal time off, spending time with family and things like that, just traveling. But unfortunately, at the moment, I mean, I have a retail job that I work every now and then. But other than that, artistically, it's still like at a standstill, if I'm being honest with you. And I do feel like even if you do end up getting work at a studio or whatever, right? It's still very temporary. So I feel like it's always good to constantly work on personal projects, constantly keep that flow going. And eventually you want to get to a point where you can start making your own stuff and people just support you. Like for example, I released a 3D kit bash set of just some rocks recently, and I didn't think I was gonna get any sales, any downloads, but I crossed like 50 downloads the other day, and I'm like, this is a milestone for me, right? Like people will support you um, if you have like a brand built around you. So lately, I've just been focusing on that, working on personal projects, uploading on YouTube, getting feedback, getting clicks, and then hopefully making it into something that's like a lot bigger to the point where I don't have to depend on a studio to make a living. You know what I mean?
definitely, speaking of the landscape of the industry right now, like
It's pretty
I've just been
shitty.
noticing something like one of my friends is actually like a really well-known like picture artist, and he told me as well. I was discussing this with him as well, that the sales have gone so low all over in the marketplaces. And well, when you think about it, when there's this whole thing about the layoffs, there's this worrying thing about AI, which have always been for the past 2-3 years, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, it's very natural for morale to get low, you know? Like suddenly, dude, 1,900 jobs in a bang.
Just gone.
Dude,
And
1,900 is not like a low number. It's a lot of people.
yeah. And
That's crazy.
the other thing is that I feel like, as far as concept art is concerned, learning concept art is more accessible than ever now. Prior to COVID, you only had a couple schools, couple universities. You had maybe like one or two online schools. But after COVID, you have so many resources, right? You got professional concept artists releasing their own courses, their own mentorships. A lot of schools are going online, teaching their stuff. And I feel like it's so accessible than ever. It's so easy to learn. But the one thing that the teachers don't really push in these classes is that, hey, there aren't enough jobs. They gotta like mentally prepare these students that, and I was a victim of this. Like they don't tell us like how like there aren't enough jobs. Like the reality is that there aren't enough concept art jobs, right? So you have to be like really, really good to even like break into. And what's happening right now is that you have these professionals with like years and years of experience, and then they get laid off. And so now you're competing with like these people who got laid off with like, a bunch of years of experience. And so now it's like it just feels impossible, right? You get that feeling. But so I think it's totally normal to feel that way. But at the same time, I do feel like I am hopeful that hopefully it'll get better. But at the same time, people say that every year. I feel like the same thing was said last year, the same thing was said the year before. So along with all that, I definitely believe it's good to have like another outlet for yourself where you're just building your own brand, your own business, so that eventually that takes off, and then you can just like work on that. But yeah, like the schooling system in concept art is like there's a little bit of disconnection, not disconnection, disconnect between the industry and the teaching part. It's become like a big source of income for a lot of people, right? It's a business model at this point that, hey, we'll teach you how to draw and stuff, and you can work in the games industry, but we're not going to tell you that there aren't enough jobs. So that's one of the biggest things that I've experienced.
Welcome to academia industry. You just summed up the whole academia industry in a nutshell. Like, like for example, a lot of philosophy majors, there's a philosophy professor, hey, come learn philosophy. And you go get a philosophy major, and you just have to, go back and trying to find the same position your professor had. So it basically feels like a pyramid scheme at some point. The whole academia. I just mentioned philosophy as an example. I'm not necessarily like have anything against the philosophy majors or anything like that. But the same with concept. Like, for example, a lot of, universities or institutes who teach game design and creative media and all that stuff. A lot of the teachers are not even qualified, are not even good artists, are not even industry like professionals. Listen, if you're in this professional and you're working well, you don't have the time to teach in institute. Usually, wait. Let me rephrase that. Don't people don't quote me out of context, please, because I know great people, artists who also have their own schools, have their own systems because they're passionate about teaching. That's a different case. But in general, especially in most colleges, and for example, I'm gonna give a shout out to someone who I had previously on the podcast as well, like Ahmed Al-Duri. I know who doesn't know him. I love that guy. He had his meds map course is like $330, right?
Mm.
I don't even know it. And with that, like $330. Well, actually, let me give shout out to someone else who had the podcast, like Thiago Klafki. Actually, I'm going through his course as well. By the way, I'm not sponsored at all. These are just people that I just enjoy talking to, and I think their stuff is amazing. And his course actually, like Thiago's course, also has different tiers on Gumroad. There's $360, there's $128, $50. But even the $50 one, the amount of knowledge you get to become a 3D environment artist, is like priceless compared to like I don't know, $60,000 at least. How much is like a 2-year program right now in the US? I don't know.
It's a lot,
like for
yeah.
Is it 60? Or I just splurted like a random number out. Like I think it's probably higher right now.
Maybe more than that, yeah. I mean, like the most famous concept art school right now is in California, Art Center, and that one is like close to that per year. So if you're going for 4 years, you're like drowning in debt at this point. And it's crazy. Like I don't know. I'm not gonna talk too much about it at this point. And what's funny though, a lot of their students who end up going to Art Center, and when they get a job, they drop out and they'll just start working. Like I've met so many people like that, because at Brainstorm School, a lot of Art Center students go to Brainstorm as well and take like extra classes. And I met a few people through there who went to Art Center for like 2 years, and then they found a job, and then they just dropped out, and they started working. And it's all about and so the same thing you can do by yourself by learning other courses, or just going to like a trade school like Brainstorm or Sin Studio or Concept Design Academy or CGMA. There's so many out there, but like that cost fairly less compared to $100,000.
And honestly, like if I could boil everything down in very simple terms, from everything that I've heard from a lot of people, artists, and just my own solitary thoughts myself, your first main task is to figure out what clicks with your brain the best. What I mean by that, I'm not talking about what you love the most. Go do what you love, which is, of course, I'm trying to make it fun of it a little bit, but it's kind of part of it as well. Yeah, sure, you need to do what you like, but liking is not the most important part. At the same time, you need to figure out what clicks with your brain the most. And what I mean by that, without sounding too convoluted, is to figure out, what you're really talented at. Are you really good at details? Are you really good at characters? Are you really good at anatomy? Are you really good at environments? Are you really good at storytelling through color?
Mm-hmm.
I need to ask yourself these questions. And when you figure that out, get laser focused on it for a couple of years, and voila. And no, not voila. Wait a second. But it depends.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get to a point.
Yeah, you make your connections and you get the job. Because listen, yeah. I don't care how bad the industry gets, how much layoffs there are. If you have something unique to offer, and by the way, I'm not trying to insult people who got laid off or saying they didn't have anything unique to offer, but at the same time, I believe if you have genuinely something very unique to offer, so you can make yourself an outlier, it'll be a lot harder for you to get laid off.
Yeah,
that's the truth. And the fastest way to get there is to, as I said, go back to step one that I mentioned. Figure out what clicks with your brain the most.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest is history, And do you have anything else to add on to that?
No, yeah, I totally agree with you. But at the same time, I also feel like many times the decision is made by some higher up who doesn't know anything about art. So even if you do have something unique to offer and you find yourself in a situation where you do get laid off, it's never really because of your skill. It's mostly because of just some dude sitting in like a high chair making those decisions. So I would just say, if you're ever in that situation, just don't beat yourself up about it. Just keep going, keep pushing yourself, because you should know your own value, and then from there you'll just keep getting more work.
And honestly, I know it sounds kind of weird, but I'm kind of optimistic about the whole industry. I'm really optimistic. You know why? Because I think, uh, from my perspective, how I see things is that capitalism is ruining game industry by in the past couple of years, and we can all see it with the
Yeah.
different shady practices that have been going on. The live service thing, like for example, the recent thing, the Justice Kill the Justice League game, the Suicide Squad one. Have you seen the news about that?
Yeah. People
Um,
hate that game.
yeah, is live service is buggy. Like you can't even play it if the servers are offline, which is kind of weird. But there's like a lot of other things. I don't want to get into those spoil too much, but what I'm saying, there have been a lot of weird things that going on in the industry, and it's basically like like for example, another big example I can give you is that how Cyberpunk got rushed in 2021 because they
Hmm.
needed to reach a deadline, and the investors they just said, just push the red button and just release the game, and you got a cluster mess of a game, you know?
Yeah. Even with movies, I feel like VFX has been like not, I mean,
Oh
not as
God,
good. And I'm
yeah.
not blaming the VFX artists. Like they're doing the best that they can, but it's just that they've been giving um these deadlines, unrealistic deadlines. When I watched the Flash movie that came out, I was like, this movie's a joke. Like the VFX looked so bad. But once again, I'm like, it's not the VFX who are at fault here. It's just like
Yeah.
those deadlines. Like people just they want to spend less money and get more out of it. And it's bad. Like right now, like it's just I don't know what to do.
Yeah, but for example, when these investors who don't know nothing about the industry, or the only thing they care about is the numbers and deadlines. When they see, for example, a game like Stardew Valley as a solo developer makes a lot of money, or like this, like the solo indie devs that make a lot of money, of course they're gonna fucking seethe and get angry as to, oh my god, how can we reach these numbers? Like they don't understand the secret sauce that makes a product great, game great, right?
Hmm.
And not just games like animations or anything like that. But I think, like I have hope for the industry because of studios like Larian, studios of like CD Projekt Red. Of course, I kind of mentioned, their kind of blunder they made with Cyberpunk, but of course, they absolutely redeemed themselves. It's an amazing game now.
Yeah,
It's an
yeah, for
absolute
sure.
amazing game. Like, go play it. I played it like late um September of last September. Like I didn't play it initially on the launch. I played it when the new DLC came. It was amazing. I only just run into just one bug, and they literally patched that bug a week later.
That's good.
I'm not kidding. It was a mission bug. And with the studios like this that still have a lot of following, with the amount of like indie devs that have been popping up and making a lot of success, because of the stories, they give me hope that the industry could shift towards like a more healthier cycle, because the things
Hmm.
like this are usually like a pendulum, they switch back and forth, like for example in 2008 there was a lot of layoffs all over the world as well,
Yeah, I feel
and
like it's a
right
similar
now,
situation.
yeah, exactly, but we're going through something similar, but we don't really notice it. Like
Yeah.
a lot of like institutions don't want to admit we're going through the crisis, but we are, that's the truth. But I think, I have high hopes for, like, even though there's this whole threat of AI looming over us, I still have hope for, that creative jobs, won't go anywhere anytime soon,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And like, listen, good art has always, people admirers. That's just it. Good art. And listen, let's see, like in 78 years, we're in a dystopian version of the world where mostly all art jobs are gone. When someone wants to, for example, a collector or a very rich person who wants to, buy something in like a auction, they say, "Oh, this piece has been made by a human, so that's gonna have a certain value to it."
Yeah.
This is like a scenario I just made up in my mind for a second. Like, so your work is going to be valid. Don't worry. That's all I'm gonna say. Just I have like actually positive, good hopes for the future of the industry, and not just industry, just art jobs in general, just art. And yeah, let's see what happens. Maybe
We'll see.
maybe in 2-3 years I get this part of this podcast out of context and play like and all the art jobs are gone.
Create
I
an
don't
AI
know.
bot, an AI
Yeah,
version
just
of yourself.
yeah, exactly. just enjoy it while it lasts. I guess I don't know what to say anymore, man. Do you have anything to say?
No, not really. I mean, I'm pretty much done, I guess, if you're done. But yeah.
All right. And all right, so we reached the final question and section of the podcast, which is called time capsule, which, of course, by the name of the section, you can kind of guess how it's going to go. So I'm just going to, try to explain it in this way. If, like, in the next couple of minutes, if you could distill and summarize the most valuable lessons you've learned in your life thus far, what would they be? And these next sentences we're going to say are going to be kind of like a time capsule, and anyone at any point of time in the future is going to hear it. So your audience isn't necessarily artists, are humans, from one human to another human being. What would be your most valuable and thoughtful lessons you've learned in your life?
I guess the biggest one that I've mentioned earlier as well would be experimentation. Like, don't be scared to try new things, like whatever it is, right? In my case, it was trying different art things, but it could be anything, right? Just don't be scared to, just try new things. The other thing I would say is definitely, be kind to yourself. If you don't compare yourself to other people. Many times, I'll go down to the grocery store and I'll see some dude driving a Mercedes, and I'm immediately comparing myself that, oh my God, if only I was rich enough to have this car, my life would be so much better. But you don't know what this person is going through. Maybe they have maybe they have some problems that you don't have, right? And maybe they're thinking the opposite. So like, definitely don't compare yourself to other people, and just be nice, just be nice to everyone. You don't have to be, just don't stress out. Don't like put your stress on other people, right? Many times we get stressed out and then we take it out on other people. Those could be like family members or friends or whatever. So try not to do that as well. But yeah, that's what I would say for the most part.
All right, awesome. And I guess that's a wrap. Thank you so much for coming by for this episode. Where can people contact you if they had any questions? Is there Instagram account okay?
Yeah, I'm literally on every social media platform except Twitter at this point, X, I want to say. But I'm on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. You can email me, ArtStation, and I check my stuff regularly. So, I always respond. So any of those should work. LinkedIn as well. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn also.
Interesting. And with that being said, again, thank you so much for coming by. And thank you to anyone who tuned in and listened to this episode as well. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, if there's any comments or suggestions, leave them down in the comment section down below. And yes, I am fully aware of the less than usual low frequency of the uploads of this podcast as well. I'm going through a lot of stuff right now in my personal life. And I just recorded, one episode like 2 days ago and another episode today after 6 weeks. So yeah, I'm trying my best. I'm sorry, for anyone.
And you're doing great. Be nice to yourself. Don't compare yourself,
Yep, exactly.
There you go.
There are 250 other episodes you guys can listen while I'm,
there you go,
trying to figure out other episodes.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, all right. So that's about it. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. And until next episode. Bye-bye.
See ya. Take care.